This is Chris in Boise. In this video, we're going to show you how to remove a Sram red crank set and large crank chain ring from the crank. And in this video, to start off the process, we're going to have to remove the chain first. And when I remove the chain, I actually use Whipperman chain links that actually remove without any tools. And it's a Connex Whipperman chain link that I don't need any tools to remove with. And then the other three tools that I'll be using to remove the Sram red crank is an 8mm Allen wrench, a 5mm, and a 6mm Allen wrench to remove the large chain ring. And to start the process off, the 8mm Allen wrench is just going to fit right inside that crank. And I'm going to take that 8mm Allen wrench. I'm going to set it in position where I can put force pushing down on the crank and pulling up on the 8mm Allen wrench. And you're going to pull it up and then just start cranking it. And actually, the Allen wrench is going to come out. It's going to start unscrewing. This is actually just going to remove the crank arm itself. Just unscrew, and now the crank arm actually it comes off. I didn't remove the chain, but I should have removed the chain before, but I'll go ahead and remove it now. It's a simple process. It's just a Whipperman chain link. Just push it, the two links together. It actually just comes off pretty easily. So I'll just remove my chain. Now the actual whole other side of the crank just removes right out. That's how to remove the crank itself with their Sram red crank. It's a pretty simple process. Now if I want to remove the large chain ring, we've got Allen wrench fittings on both sides. And we take the 5mm Allen wrench on this side, and then the 6mm Allen wrench on the back side. You just loosen that up. I'm just going to take these, remove them out. There's two sides that actually come apart right there, and you want to just take a close look. The small one comes off the outside, the large one comes off the inside. Now you just go through this process removing each one of them. I actually take my crank off, and I actually take these chain rings, the large chain ring off. I do this about once a month, so I can just clean it really good, all the inside the grooves and everything on the crank itself and the chain ring. I like it to be really clean, free of any dirt and debris. So it's a pretty simple process to take it off, remove it. So and then when you're putting this thing back together, you want to torque these things down. You don't want to over tighten them. You don't want to make them too loose, so they don't actually come loose while you're riding. And you can use a torque wrench on it if you want. I got an adjustable torque wrench that I actually use when I torque them down. loosen them all up, and it's all come apart now. I've got 3 pieces to the crank arm. Now I take some cleaner degreaser. I use just carburetor cleaner, and I actually clean these things up really nicely. And then once they're really cleaned up really good, then I go through and put it back together. When you're actually putting this thing back together, the small ring is actually going to go on first, and it's really important the small chain ring has a groove going around the small chain ring. It's actually not, the ring itself is kind of off-centered a little bit, and the way the chain ring goes on, the flat side that doesn't have that groove, the flat side actually goes on first. If you put the side that has this groove on it, if you put that on first, you're going to see right off the bat it's going to have shifting problems because it's actually off center. So you want to make sure the non-groove side goes on first. Now we're ready to put our crank back on. I actually put the 2 chain rings back on. I haven't actually torqued them down, tightened up the bolts on the chain rings yet. I'm going to install the chain ring first. And prior to putting it on, I use a little bit of slick honey grease. And I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the spindle right here, get it lubricated. You always want to put a little bit of grease on that when you reinstall this crank. So I'm going to put the drive side in, just shove it on through, and then your other crank arm, one crank arm is facing down, this one's going to face up. You'll just get it lined up. Get my 8mm wrench. And you'll just start tightening it back up. Now it's back in there. Now you just begin to torque it back down. Tighten this up fairly snug. It actually tells you right here to tighten it up to 133 inch-pounds or 12 to 15 nanometers. If you don't have a torque wrench, you're going to have to kind of guess at it, but you're going to want to have that thing good and tight. Now the crank's back on, spinning freely, test it out. Now I can reinstall my chain. It's got a Whipperman link on it, so it's easy to reinstall with that Whipperman link, no tools. Feed it through, give yourself a little bit of slack up front. Get it over the top of the derailleur. Get it over the top of the first pulley. Run it through your second pulley. Then your Whipperman link, you want to make sure the back link comes through the back side of the chain. And the front link on the front part right here it's hanging, it's going to push in through the front. If you put it on backwards, it could go on backwards, but you'll actually get a little bit of skipping on the rear derailleur with the chain. It'll actually hop on the back slightly. Now it's all put back together. Then now I'm going to use my 5 and 6mm wrench to actually tighten up my chain ring. A little bit easier to tighten it up while it's on the bike. You can actually take the 2 chain rings off while this thing's on the bike without even taking the crank off too. And I quite frequently take my chain rings off because the Sram red, I have a real problem with the Sram red front chain ring, the teeth bend, and so I'm constantly straightening the teeth on them and filing them down to get little burrs off of them to make sure my shifting is nice and smooth. All torqued down. You want to make sure these things are nice and tight. Definitely don't want them coming loose while you're riding or racing. Go around twice, check each one of them, make sure it's good and snug. That's how you remove and reinstall a SRAM Red crankset and chain.